All right. Hey, gang. Apologize for the lateness of this lecture getting up. I was actually out of town from Sunday till Wednesday. I had an event at school this morning and then had my kids all day have what they call an E-Day in Zionsville. Where they come home and they do all their assignments online and I get to play de facto teacher to my children. So yeah, crazy, crazy day. Again, my apologies. I'm gonna try to make sure I get the next lecture up by Sunday night. Thank you all for your patience. I saw that there was an email out about assignments being graded. They will all be done by this weekend, so I'll be caught up by then. So again, thank you guys for your patience. But real quickly, we're going to get into chapters 10, 11, and 12. We're now into the service side of things, kind of getting away from the sales side. So you're going to see both elements, both sides, if you will. On the service side, God bless these people who take on this role. And if you guys are one of them, again, best of luck with everything. This is, I don't want to say it's a difficult job. It has its difficulties, but it is one that is weird hours and a lot of times, and you have to be so on your game. The people that I had the privilege of working with at the Crown Plaza were unbelievable. They were dedicated. They were there early. They were there late. Their attention to detail was unbelievable. And that is what you need to be in a service role. Okay. So when you get into client services, chapter 10, client services, or various hotels have various names for it, but that's typically the area that is going to take what the sales manager promised and bring it to life. So what is the important relationship between a sales manager and a client services, if you will? You obviously can't promise what you can't produce. And the good sales managers will know what their client service department can handle and can make happen. So again, you have to make sure you're in constant communication with those guys to find out, hey, does this room hold what I'm saying it holds? Can we flip a room this fast? What is chef's idea about doing a $15 per person plated meal? Is that going to drive them crazy from a budget standpoint? They're going to be the one that kind of keeps you in check. And they're unbelievable. If you're blessed with the kind of people I got to work with, they were unbelievable. They would sit down with me and say, hey, this is your threshold. You can't go beyond this, can't go beyond that. Or if you're going to do this, we had you to know X amount of days in advance. We're going to have to bring on extra staff if we're going to flip that room. So they were tremendous in keeping me to make sure the things I promised we could bring to life. And that is so vitally important because that trust that I have with the client, if I promise something I can't deliver on, I've lost that. And I have to know what my services team can do before I make those promises. So the what and the how. Again, the client services are going to basically take everything in your contract and they're going to bring it to life. So if indeed that you promised 4 upgrades and 2 suites, they're making sure that those are getting in the reservation system and they're blocked off. If we are going to do 5 breakouts in these 5 rooms, it's going to sit classroom 2 per 6. They're making sure everything is laid out for the communications to the hotel. That's exactly what's being set up. So they are, like I said, they are bringing it to life. For those of you who have a desire to be a meeting planner, this is a good, if you can't get in the meeting planning side right away, getting to the client services side for a hotel is a fantastic way to kind of get your feet wet in that world because you're going to be working with planners and you're going to have to think like them. The best client services people we had thought like a planner. They would look at what I would give them and they would say, okay, have they asked you about this? Have they asked you about internet? Have they asked you about electricity? Have they asked you about a registration table on the very front? It doesn't need to be skirted. And so all the kind of things that a planner should be processing, our client services team was processing as well and making sure that if there were pitfalls, then that they brought it up to the planner well in advance of anything happening at the hotel. So again, their attention to detail is unbelievable. Their creativity was unbelievable. The ability to communicate verbally, written, electronically, whatever had to be done, they have to have that ability. It's vital. They have to have the ability to listen and they have to have the ability to problem solve. So again, the client services side, I can never give enough respect for those people for what they do, the good ones, how much it means to them, and to what degree they'll go to help their client have that perfect event. So again, that's kind of where they're at. And so when it transitions from the sales team to the client services, hotels do it differently. I mean, everybody does it a little bit differently. Some will have a conference call to introduce who their client services manager will be, and therefore they're kind of handing them off to this one. They could have a pre-con, bring everybody in, and again, it's that, I'm always going to be there as a sales manager, but I'm no longer your point person because I'm not the expert. The client services manager is the expert. They will help you make sure that the food is correct, the room setup is correct, things you're missing, things you haven't thought of, who our resources are. So if you don't have somebody who does flowers, let me give you the list of people who we have that do. You need linens because you want to go a different color than we provide complimentary. Here's a list of companies. So again, that's their role. And then I go back to selling again, which is what I'm there for. So it's a very symbiotic relationship, if you will. Again, it just flows from one to the other. And those guys are essential. I can't say it enough. Essential to bring the promises that I've made as a sales manager to life. So again, that transition can be anything from a phone call, could be an email, and it could be a pre-con. So it just depends. But those client services, it's going to vary upon hotel as well. So, and obviously a larger hotel where you're going to have multiple departments and you're heavily staffed, you'll see someone take on maybe just meetings, or maybe they'll take on just social events, or they're getting the big events, right? It's a combination of everything. Or in some cases, at a select service property where you may have a ballroom that seats, not ballroom, a boardroom that seats 20, you're not giving it up. There is no transition, right? I sold it. I'm going to come in on Tuesday afternoon, and I'll make sure that the tablecloths are down and Panera's in there, and your internet's up, and I've got the flip charts are in the room, and everything's ready to go, and it's on me, and I am a one-stop shop. So it will depend upon what hotels you're at as far as how much responsibility you have for the service side. So I've always liked to think that it's better to start small so you can see all of that. You have a very, very healthy respect for what the client service people go through. And again, it will keep you from early on promising things that can't be done. There's nothing worse, nothing worse in this world than for my client services manager to walk in my office and go, "Are you out of your mind? Why in the world would you promise X?" Okay. It puts the fear of God in me because obviously I've already promised it to the client. I've upset one of my colleagues who doesn't think that it's possible. So again, that communication that you have between you and the client service manager is just as important as what they're going to have between themselves and the client. So again, client services. So we're going to drop into a few, the next two chapters also touch on different elements when it comes to that. Chapter 11 talks about rooms and reservation systems. Make sure you guys read through that. That's ever changing. I know that, there are different systems that are coming online. Obviously, as everything becomes more and more technology based, you're going to see a variation of new systems. Most people use the Delphi system, I think is what we were on. And there's one other system, and I'm blanking on it right now, but it does depend upon the flag. So again, it could change from a Marriott to a Hilton. Sometimes they have little tweaks to the system. So again, read up on the chapter. I don't know how much of that you'll get into as a sales manager or client services manager. If you go on the room side, like a rooms manager, where you're going to kind of work in the front of the house, you'll live in that system. That's where all the reservations obviously are made. So important to know what goes into it, what kind of information you need to make sure you know. And again, depending upon what your role is going to be, you might play in that system for quite some time. They talk a little bit in chapter 11 about third parties, and we've already touched on a few of their lectures. The big three they mentioned: Conference Direct, Experience, Helms Briscoe. These are the ones who are going to work on behalf of a client. And it's a very neat relationship that they have, and it's really quite fascinating. The client does not pay them. You, the hotel, pay them. And basically you're paying them what I'll call a finder's fee or a commission, right? So if they bring a piece of business to you, they're going to get 10% of whatever that business is. So for instance, you have 100 rooms, you reach $100, that's $10,000. And so they get 10% of that, they get $1,000. And that's how they make their money. The client pays nothing. Everything comes out of us, which in kind of way makes sense. They brought us a piece of business. We're going to pay them for that. And so what's interesting, I know when I last left the industry, there were some adjustments going on with the commission structure, where for the longest time it was locked in at, I want to say 7%, maybe no higher than 5%. and they were trying to bump it up to 10, and there was a lot of pushback. And was it worth it to get the piece of business? If you have a good sales team, can you get it without? Sure. But if your top client in your area, say Rolls Royce or Lilly or Siemens or Cummins, all use a third party, you're going to have to pay that commission. And quite frankly, you're only paying the commission when you make money. So it's not like I'm paying the commission, I can get anything out of it. We got $30,000 in revenue and I had to pay 10% of it out. So be it, I'm still ahead. So it was interesting how they looked at that, and kind of where they were trying to go. I mean, obviously, if you have a big enough sales team, you're going to get enough non-third-party business that you're not paying out any commissions. But again, I always looked at it as it was money well worth paying because they brought me something. So, but again, you'll see more of that. And I kind of talked about it in some earlier lectures. When 2008 hit, a lot of companies did away with their in-house um, uh, event planners, if you will. And then that's kind of the rise of the third party, where again, they weren't having to pay them anything. But they had the backing, obviously, of being very professional and very, very good at what they do. And it could be everything from where they're just going to source a hotel and say, hey, here's the 3 best hotels we found. Here's the prices. Pick which one you want. Or it could be they're going to do that. They're going to do the site tour, and they're going to be on site, and they're the point person to run the whole thing. Just depends upon what the organization, whether it's a corporate, whether it's Smurf, whether it's athletics, whatever they would want to use them for. So again, they're major players in the market, and I'd be shocked if you don't run across them, whether you're in select service or full service. So some of the basics they touch on in the book, and again, as you guys get into hotels, you'll definitely get to see this. Hopefully, a number of you have gotten to do some internships, and so you've already kind of dabbled in this. But really, kind of talking about your basic rooms and how they set up. Obviously, you've got a variety of room types. It just depends upon what kind of hotel. You're always going to have a standard type, and then so many upgrades. Upgrades can be as nice as full-blown office suites that have jacuzzi tubs and pool tables and God only knows what else. It could just be something unique. And again, at the Crowne Plaza, we had train car rooms, right, where there are actually rooms in 1920 Pullman train cars. So you'll have unique experiences like that. It could just be an upgrade from the standpoint of the room is bigger, the bed's bigger, it has a refrigerator, it has a fully stocked bar. So you're going to want to know your room types, especially when you're putting together contracts, what you're promising, making sure they're you have them in inventory for that particular time frame. You're going to make sure you know about comps. Okay, a lot of times hotels are put together where they'll say, 1 per 50 or 1 per 40. So in other words, for every 40 or 50 rooms you buy, you get 1 for free. And maybe that goes to the planner, maybe that goes to the VIP. Maybe that room's an upgrade. So you're going to make sure you understand what your comp structure is, because again, that's giving away a free room, that's revenue lost. Again, you need to make sure that's okay with your DOS, your GM, whoever you have to report up to. The group history is going to be important too. Is this group always pick up? Does this group seem to have a fall off at some point? Do they pick up the main rooms on the bell curve, if you will, but don't pick up the shoulder nights? Okay, these are the kind of things you want to know, because you're going to block your rooms accordingly. What a lot of people don't understand is, in the hotel world, you will block. Okay, so my contract says you're getting 100 rooms. I'm holding in my system 80. And that sounds totally crazy. And it sounds totally like, why in the world would you do that? We know from a history of seeing room blocks over the last 50 years that where and when and how they pick up. Typically, they'll pick up at least 80%. Now, this is why the group's history is so important. If you know for the last 4 times they've done this meeting, they put up 100% of the room block, you block 100%. If you get that history and it says, man, 60%, 40, 75, I'm sorry, you'll hear my phone Chewbacca go off here, I apologize. Different things going on, then you need to make sure you hold it accordingly. And you're going to watch this room block. If all of a sudden Indianapolis is a better destination and boom, it's picking up right away, but then we're going to continue to fill the block in. But it is something that, again, hotels do. It's kind of a risk. You're kind of rolling the dice, and it's up to your client services manager and you to watch that block closely to make sure that if it is picking up more than we're holding, that we make sure that that block is filled with rooms, because you are contracted, you're obligated to have that many. You're kind of playing, it's a bit of a gamble, but it's based on history. So again, you'll see more of that as you guys get into working or interning for a hotel. So, and then the pattern, and I kind of alluded there a minute ago, just they call it bell curve, right? So a lot of times you have your peak nights. So for instance, if a group's having a meeting and they have rooms on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are the peak nights, right? Everyone's going to be there, but you're going to have some people come in on the shoulder nights, right? You're coming in from the West Coast, you can't get a flight out on Tuesday, you're going to come in Monday. Or someone might say, I want to stay later because I want to see what's going on in the city, or there's a Colts game, what have you. So you have what's called shoulder nights. They're outside the peak nights. And knowing your bell curve is incredibly important, so you hold rooms accordingly that flow all the way through. And that's something that I think sales managers probably, you'll learn it fairly quickly, but it's just trying to get your head wrapped around the fact that I'm going to have, 1 or 2 rooms held here, 10 or 20 here, 30, 40, 50, because we know from our history that's how the room nights go, that you're just going to have more rooms on your peak nights, and then people kind of fall off as you get closer to the end of a meeting, of an association gathering, of a social gathering, doesn't matter. So, but you'll know that from looking at their history. And then managing a block, okay? And so this is important, where a lot of times it depends upon the hotel. Again, if you're doing everything, if you're the sales manager and the client services manager, you'll do it all. You've got to watch that block. If you're 3 months out from the meeting and that block is 95% full, you probably need to put more rooms in there. They probably didn't block enough rooms. You got to talk to the client and say, hey, this thing's filling up rather fast. What's your feeling? Are more people going to book? Because if so, we don't hold enough rooms because you've only asked me for 100. You've already filled 95. We need to add more into here. Or you have to flip flop, right? Hey, we're a month out. You held 100. You picked up 20. Let's see if we don't release a few of these. See if we can sell them. Okay. And why you do that is, remember, we talked about how there's attrition in all the contracts, right? They're obligated to pick up a certain percentage. In our contracts, I believe it was 80%. So again, if you had that 100, the client is on the hook for 80% of those rooms, 80 rooms. So if they only book 60, they still have to pay for the 20 because they're contractually obligated to that. You need to make sure you have that discussion with your client. Most of the time, that's going to start and really ratchet up with a client services manager, because again, they're going to be the one, in a bigger box hotel, they're going to manage the block. If you're a select service, you'll do it yourself as a sales manager, but typically that's in the client services area and they're going to watch that block. And as they get closer, if it's not picking up, they're going to have that hard conversation with the client, say, hey, look, if you release some of these and we can sell them, maybe we let you drop that attrition rate even down further because we were able to move the rooms, we're not out anything. Some hotels will do that. But they'll have to watch that to keep track of it. So that's chapter 11. Chapter 12 goes into the actual event prep itself. And this gets into more of the nitty gritty of actually putting once you're talking to, as a client service manager, when you're talking to actually putting together all of your details. And so they're gonna talk about a pre-con. Doesn't always happen. Your bigger meetings, it probably will. I'd imagine association meetings, usually they're fairly large and they're done in advance. So you might have one a year out, 8 months out, 4 months out, and then boom, you're ready to go. It just depends upon the client. Those pre-con meetings basically are going over details. Hey, we're still looking at this many people. The general session we want to be set up in classroom style. We want the breakouts to be set up in theater style. This meal is going to have 400 people. It's going to include spouses. And by the way, you need this kind of AV. So they're going through to make sure that no detail is left unchecked. These are very, very important meetings. Client services managers are going to be asking a ton of questions to make sure they perfectly understand everything and that it's set up correctly. Out of those pre-cons and out of those conversations that will go on in between the first pre-con and when they actually get there, there's a lot of conversations, a lot of emails back and forth, phone calls, what have you. Your client services people start to put together what's called a resume. And the resume is everything that is going to go on that day, that room, that event. They can be the size of encyclopedias, okay? They can be huge, they could be 1 page. It just depends upon what's going on, how big the event is, and all that kind of stuff. So you're gonna see them to put together that, and that's where the details come in, right? And it could be everything from, I had a client where they said, look, we're only serving Coors Light, and by God, we can't run out. That's the VP's favorite drink. We're only gonna have these kind of brownies because we had them at the pre-con and they went nuts over them. We've got to have it. So those are the kind of things you're going to have in this resume, and it's going to, hey, these guys are the 5, 6, these ladies, these men are the 5, 6 VIPs. You have to know them, be on guard. They're, they want this to go smooth. They might be a little bit maybe uptight, uptense, so just be ready to help them when you see them. Hey, by the way, we're going to have signage here, 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 and here. All the TVs that we have are going to be showing the Big Ten network because it happens to be the Big Ten tournament. We've got Iowa and we've got Purdue, and again, we're going to have them in here. And so, again, those kind of details are laid out. And that resume then goes out to all the pieces in the hotel who are going to have a hand in this, right? Front desk is going to get it. I, as a sales manager, am going to get it, so I can make sure that there's nothing that conversation I had to go, oh, wait a minute, they said this. Does nothing change? Okay, fine. Or no, it didn't change. I'm going to be on this. Catering is going to get this. Room manager is going to get it. Anybody who's going to touch this group is going to get a copy of that resume to make sure they have their marching orders. That's basically what that is. And that client services manager is one that puts it all together. From the resume then is going to come what's called BEOs. And these are the banquet event orders. This gets into the actual details too of the pricing and what exactly a meal function is going to have, right? They're paying for this, 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 this. Client says, yep, that's exactly what I want. They sign off on it. We're all good. It's almost like a secondary contract after the first one. It makes sure the details are, yep, you're charging us for special linens and special chairs. We added an extra AV, and we want the upgraded desserts, and we want surf and turf. And everybody, and the surf and turf gets into more detail about, it's going to be rice with this and this, and it just has all the details, and then they'll sign off on it. So then those BEOs will go back to our catering staff, so they know exactly, again, what it is they're going to be putting out there. The last thing, again, and I've said it a few times already, but the communication ability with the client services manager. Again, you guys imagine for those of you who are old enough, maybe who've already gone through this, what your wedding day was like. All the details that you had to deal with, right? There's another 3 times that on the venue side to make sure certain things are in line before you get there. Think of any training you've gone to at any hotel. When you walked in, was there signage? Did they know your name? Did they know how to direct you? Was there a registration desk? Did they have name cards? What were the tables like? Were they set up in a certain way that everybody could see the front? By the way, were there any pillars in the way they had to work around? Was it AV or the person had to shout? Did you have TV monitors? Think of all the things that had to be set up. Again, that communication started weeks, if not months, and sometimes years before that meeting. So again, I cannot stress enough, if you're going to go into that world of client services, communication is key, attention to detail. The 2 things you absolutely have to have. So, hey guys, that gets us through chapters 10, 11, and 12. I will have the next chapters up by this Sunday. Again, thank you all for your patience. And I will get those, everything will be graded by this weekend, and then we'll hit the ground running again on Monday. All right, guys, thanks. Have a great night.